Hello all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page International. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. Floods went rampant in Europe and China. While one is a natural disaster, the other might be a man-made catastrophe. The WHO warned of the risk of mixing vaccines after Canadians were urged to do so. So what's the impact and who's going to take responsibility? July 20th is a date that affects millions of people, but you may not know why because it's something that no mainstream media wants to get into. Today, we'll talk about one of the worst and most overlooked human rights crises in recent history. Okay, let's get into it. The cleanup and search for victims continues after devastating storms in Western Germany. Due to continuous rainfall, flash floods, and rivers overflowing last Wednesday night, dozens of residents drowned in their own homes before they were able to get to safety. More than 177 people lost their lives, 600 were injured, and dozens are still missing. Rescue teams have been painstakingly going through the debris left in the destroyed areas. They are trying desperately to recover more bodies. The cost of the damage is expected to reach several billions of dollars. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel traveled to one of the hardest hit regions. She said, "It's shocking. No German word can describe the destruction." The German government unlocked some 400 million euros, about $470 million in immediate relief on Wednesday. Finance Minister Olaf Scholz said that half of it will come from Europe's top economies and the rest from 16 German states. The deluge also pummeled Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and the Netherlands, leaving streets and homes submerged in muddy waters and isolating entire communities. The death toll jumped to 30 in Belgium, with more than 21,000 people left without electricity in one region. Belgium's federal government has declared Tuesday a day of official mourning. Luxembourg Prime Minister Xavier Bettel pledged an initial package of 15 million euros, about $59 million, in immediate aid to citizens who suffered losses in the floods. Henan province in central China has also been hit hard by heavy rainfalls and flooding. On July 20th, the subway in the capital of Henan, Zhongjiao, was flooded. Train cars were trapped underground. The water gushed in and was rising quickly with hundreds of people on board. The situation was becoming critical. Many people used social media to ask for help. Parking lots and main roads all became rivers where cars were flushed and drifted along the stream. In some regions, the water level is as high as the third floor. Due to the lack of official rescue response, some regions rely on the public to help each other. According to the local meteorological bureau, from the 17th to the 20th, the rainfall of these 3 days was 617 millimeters. The average annual rainfall in Zhongjiao is 640 millimeters, which means a year's worth of rain came down on the city in 3 days. The question is, with the rainstorm forecasted, why didn't the government make arrangements in advance to evacuate residents in the dangerous areas? On July 20th, the Changzhuang Dam, upstream of Zhongjiao, was flooded with water. In order to preserve the reservoir, authorities decided to start full flood release downstream at 10:30 a.m. This led to the unprecedented flooding throughout the city. The People's Daily, the most authoritative official media of the CCP, said it was only on the evening of July 20th that the dam had started to release floodwaters downstream. As of Thursday morning, senior Beijing officials still haven't visited the affected areas. The CCP reported that 33 people are dead and 8 people are missing, but it's unclear how many people actually died. Locals suspect that officials only released some numbers because the flooding videos went viral. We will be doing an in-depth analysis on our membership site on why there are so many floods in China and why their dams always have problems. I have left a link in the description below. People in France have taken to the streets to protest against the government's decision on mandatory vaccination. Health workers who haven't been vaccinated will face suspension without pay starting September 15th. Restaurants, bars, shopping malls, and public venues will all require a health pass in order to enter. It can be either proof of vaccination, negative test results, or proof of recovery from the COVID virus. Thousands of protesters gathered a stone's throw away from the Louvre Museum. Protesters held signs saying no to the vaccine passport, liberate France, and they chanted Macron, clear off, freedom, down with dictatorship, while banging metal pots and cans. One protester said that vaccination is really about individual freedom. The government is taking away people's freedom little by little, and the people demand the right to own their choice. Someone even dressed up as the Statue of Liberty in protest. Demonstrations have taken place across France, with heated clashes erupting with police. A sizable number of police were deployed to break up the protests. Tear gas was used to disperse some protesters. The protests occurred as the country celebrated Bastille Day, commemorating the storming of a medieval armory, fortress, and political prisons during the French Revolution. Festivities and the usual parade were overshadowed by the protests. Greece also announced similar vaccination measures on Monday. They will be implementing them on August 16th, a month earlier than France. Greece's decision also flared protests. The WHO advised people last week to not mix COVID-19 vaccines from different manufacturers, warning that mixing them could be dangerous. WHO Chief Scientist Soumya Swaminathan said, "It's a little bit of a dangerous trend here." This announcement comes after Canadians were urged to mix vaccines. Due to the lack of supplies of the Pfizer vaccine in Canada, many have already mixed their vaccine shots. One Canadian tweeted, "Okay, a little late, isn't it? Millions have mixed." Others were a little furious, saying, "Are you serious? Now they tell us." Another tweeted, "I wish they would make up their minds. They told us it was okay to mix vaccines. Now my family is screwed." People who are about to get the second shot are hesitating and are not sure what to do next. Another person questioned how the government is going to respond. She tweeted, "Wow, just wow. What is Justin Trudeau and Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, going to do now that they pushed people to mix and match after they ran out of Pfizer?" The Canadian government wrote on its official website, "No data currently exists on the interchangeability of COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. However, there is no reason to believe that mRNA vaccine series completion with a different authorized mRNA vaccine product will result in any additional safety issues or deficiency in protection. But there's no reason to believe that mixing vaccines, even if they're both mRNA, is 100% safe and worth risking your health over, given the 99.98% recovery rate." The Canadian National Advisory Committee on Immunization said they will continue to monitor the evolving evidence as ongoing studies are expected in the coming months. It will be great if they can prove that mixing vaccines can do no harm, but who is going to take responsibility if it proves otherwise? Meanwhile, Canada is planning to ease its border crossing restrictions this summer, but only for those who are fully vaccinated. Starting on August 9th, fully vaccinated American citizens and permanent residents will be able to enter Canada. Hotel quarantine is also expected to be lifted on the same day. Travelers will have to have a full set of shots accepted by the Canadian government. Those who try to cross the border have to provide evidence supporting their vaccination. This must be done electronically through the government's Arrive Can app. Doesn't this sound like a vaccine passport? Visitors will also need to provide Canadian authorities with a suitable quarantine plan and will have to be prepared to quarantine. However, there seems to be a dispute over the border opening between Canada and the U.S. Homeland Security announced Wednesday that restrictions on non-essential travel crossing the Canada and Mexico border are extended until August 21st. The Tokyo Olympics will start this Friday after a one-year delay due to the virus. Meanwhile, Brisbane, Australia won the bid to host the 2032 Olympic Games. It will be the third time the land down under is a host nation. Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk made the announcement in Japan on Wednesday. She traveled to Tokyo to present Brisbane's 2032 Olympic bid to the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. However, this move attracted some controversy as Australia's international borders are still closed. The Australian Olympic Committee chief, John Coates, said in February that the Games would cost about $4.5 billion to operate, with the IOC contributing about $2.5 billion. Ticket sales and sponsorship would add about another $1 billion. Members of Parliament challenged the cost of the Games at an estimate hearing about the budget, the COVID-19 response, and the securing of the Olympics. Queensland Deputy Premier Stephen Miles claimed that the 2032 Olympics will create more than 91,000 jobs for the state. He said that the Games would inject more than $8 billion into the recovering Queensland economy, including $4.6 billion in additional trade and tourism and $3.5 billion in social benefits, with health, volunteering, and community benefits. I know there are many Australians in our audience. How do you feel about the Brisbane 2032 Olympics? Next, a shocking story that's been unfolding for decades and needs your attention. But before we get into it, I hope you're liking our new show, Front Page International. Please help us to spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. And if you want to help Front Page grow, please consider supporting us by donating to our donor box. The link's in the description below. We here at Front Page thank you for your support. Okay, let's get back into it. The date, July 20th, is a very significant day for millions of people around the world. This is the day that the Chinese Communist Party started persecuting the spiritual believers of Falun Gong. Prior to the anniversary of the persecution, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said, "We recognize 22 years since the People's Republic of China launched the campaign of repression against the Falun Gong movement and its millions of practitioners, advocates, and the human rights defenders working to protect their rights. The Chinese Communist regime has been persecuting this peaceful spiritual group since July of 1999, but we rarely hear about it on mainstream media, and even when they do report on the issue, most of the time it's repeating CCP propaganda." I want to put the spotlight on this subject because Falun Gong is one of the most severely persecuted groups in recent history. What is Falun Gong? It is a meditation practice that surged in popularity in China in the early 1990s. It also has a moral component to it that is centered on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Chinese authorities estimated that there were 70 to 100 million followers of the practice in 1999. Before the persecution, the Chinese government gave multiple awards to the practice for its health benefits, and it was widely acclaimed in the country. So, why is the CCP persecuting Falun Gong? The Chinese leader at the time, Jiang Zemin, personally resented Falun Gong's popularity. As you may know, communism doesn't tolerate any spirituality outside of their control. So on July 20th, 1999, Jiang ordered the eradication of Falun Gong by any means necessary. This includes imprisonment, torture, slave labor, and the unimaginable, forced live organ harvesting. According to independent reports, Falun Gong practitioners are the main source of the regime's 60,000 to 100,000 transplants per year. These people are basically killed on demand for their organs. It's an extremely lucrative business and the most evil thing you could ever imagine. In an online panel discussing the Falun Gong human rights crisis and its global impact, Dr. Jessica Russo, who is a board member of Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, said that organ harvesting in China is not typical of what we would imagine overseas.
Forced organ harvesting in China is very different than what we see in any other part of the world. This is not black market organ trade or trafficking. This is state-initiated, state-sanctioned, and it's going on throughout the entire country. And because they're taking their vital organs, as you noted before, this is inevitably killing them. So it's a form of execution and a form of mass murder.
And this is why we don't hear about Falun Gong in mainstream media. The CCP does everything in its power to cover up this crime against humanity. If people knew how inhumane and how severe the persecution is, there would be a global awakening. People will no longer associate with the CCP and will start to fight back. Much like when people found out about Hitler's persecution of the Jews, countries around the world took action. The president of the Congress of Christian Leaders, Johnny Moore Jr., explained why it's important for people of the world to take a stance.
Look, we love to do business with China. We love to create a better world with China and have cleaner air with China and all of these things. But the Chinese Communist Party doesn't get to make its own rules and act like that it's part of the international community. The Chinese Communist Party doesn't get to cause incomprehensible harm to the Chinese people and walk into the hallowed halls of the United Nations and tell everybody else what to do.
He called for the United States to work with its allies to take action, including sanctioning the CCP to stop the oppression.
And it's time that there are no Democrats and Republicans on this issue, but only Americans who don't want to hand the future of our world to the present condition of the Chinese Communist Party.
Despite 22 years of persecution, Falun Gong adherents in China have not given up. Many are still practicing in China and are risking their lives to tell people the truth. Falun Dafa Information Center spokesperson Erping Zhang said, "In the past 22 years, people have seen that Falun Gong practitioners clarify the truth in a peaceful way. People admire the Falun Gong practitioners they have contacted, including those imprisoned in China. The practitioners risk their lives to provide other people with an opportunity to stand on the side of history and justice." The spirit of these Falun Gong practitioners, who show courage in the face of horrific oppression and who never give in, this is exactly what the world needs to learn from in facing the current situation of a global communist takeover. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Again, if you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe this video and share it with at least one of your friends, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.